Well, we made it. Hello, everybody. Super exciting. I haven't done anything like this before, but this is me. Face reveal, if that was a secret to you guys. But welcome to 2017. Step Back had quite the crazy year, and what this whole stream is going to be about is a look back on the channel, do some stuff. I have like a little list here of all the things that I want to do, but want to give you guys some thoughts about the year, talk about some of the crazy stuff that's happened. Then we're going to do a look through of like the top 10 videos of 2016 for Step Back, give a little bit of commentary on each one. Then I have some notes that were taken on each of my videos in 2016 and talk a little bit about the kind of unresolved comments and ideas that people put forward. And then I'm going to finish the Q&A series that I started when I made it to 1,000 subscribers. So I have a handful of questions to answer. I do have my lovely wife, Kelly, is in the chat room. She's going to be monitoring it closely to find questions that you guys put forward during the whole thing, and I can answer them along the way. So that's going to be another way. I mean, I want to do this for you guys, help you guys recover from your hangovers in relative peace. And then I'll finish off by talking about what 2017 holds for Step Back. So I think to begin, I need to say that I started Step Back in 2015, probably in about August, and then about a month later I made my first video. And I did not know what was going to come out of it. I started a long time ago, 10 years ago on YouTube with a really small channel called Tristan PEJ. And that channel was very much a product of the early YouTube time, video responses, really like unfiltered videos, very much kind of like what I'm doing here. This feels like a relic of that era. And a lot of just raw discussion, intellectual stuff. It was fun, it was controversial, it was weird, but it never really got anywhere. And by the time that 2015 rolled around, I realized that, well, my wife helped me realize anyway, that the channel was very much an anachronism. It's a channel from a period in YouTube history that really doesn't exist anymore. And if I wanted to do something on YouTube, I would have to either get much better or move on and spend my energy elsewhere. And so I closed down that channel in early 2015, and later that year came up with the idea for Step Back, which was going to be going into this genre of animated explainer videos, the CGP Grey channels, the Kurzgesagt videos, the extra credits type stuff, the alternate history hub type stuff, and really try to make something that was mine, because I found that history was an underserved area of the YouTube educational space, and that there was a lot of history that wasn't being covered because the history channels that did exist were very focused on warfare, maps, generals, lineages, and to be honest, white people history and nations and all of that stuff. And I thought, there's more that I can take. Because I got my first question from the audience, what do I think about H Bomber Guy? And my answer is, I don't know who H Bomber Guy is. Sorry. So to continue, I just thought that what was happening on YouTube as far as history content goes was fairly far from what actual history content was like, or what actual history was like in the academic world. And I've always been interested in communication and about making history a much more engaging project for people. And so that's why I started Step Back. And I started Step Back with a lot of intent to make something that was, very efficient and effective as far as content goes, but also something that, could elevate us above the sort of mission of history that happens at the underlying level, at like the lower high school level history, which is mostly a project to instill I don't know, patriotism and nationalism. And I thought that was like, this is not what history is supposed to be for. It's supposed to be, the teaching of wisdom and giving us deeper contexts. And that wasn't, I thought that this was where, Step Back could do it. And 2015 had a very, very big meteoric rise, and it was a very successful year. But then 2016 turned out to be even bigger. I've published over 30 videos this year, and they've been really successful. And I'm proud of every single one of them, with maybe one exception. We'll talk about that later. And I don't know, it's just been a really good time. I've met a lot of great people, and I feel like the massive response, the massive positive response from you guys has shown that it's a project worth going for. And so I plan to keep this going as long as I can. And I also hope, pending how this stream goes, if you guys have a good time with it, to make this also a yearly tradition, the hangover cure of listening to talk about Step Back. So I do have a couple questions that came up. I have one that's discussed about my interest in linguistics, and one about, okay, I have a handful of questions now. So let me just pop them up real quick. So the first question I got was whether or not I like linguistics. And linguistics is a weird thing, because I think it's really interesting, and I used to be much more into it than I am now. I think it's really important for doing history, especially the kinds of older types of history. And I used to be interested in like more archaeological type history with like pre-Columbia and Mesoamerica. And linguistics is extremely important for understanding some stuff. So I think it's cool. I think there's really interesting stuff to come out of it. In some ways, though, I also feel like the field is really like when you get into the more technical stuff, I start to get lost. And it's probably due to something that I just haven't done enough research. Yeah, that's basically the main thing that I would probably say about that. The next question is it me, or is libertarian socialism slowly rising on YouTube? And what I would say about that is possibly. I remember when YouTube first started, or when YouTube was really young, there were really no libertarian socialists on YouTube. There were a lot of anarcho-capitalists on YouTube. But libertarian socialism, for those who don't know what it is, it's kind of like a left-wing version of libertarian ideals. So it's like a group of like anarchists who believe in organizing society without government, but not in like the Milton Friedman sense of like, let's just have everything privatized and run by capitalist rulers. So like libertarian socialists are people who say that, you can't have a free society without getting rid of both governments and like a capitalist economic order. And I count myself, to varying degrees within that bubble at any given time. I think the fact that YouTube's is just bigger than it used to be. It grows by leaps and bounds every year. So it also, the algorithms that run YouTube are like laser guided for finding things that you're interested in. And so I think there's like a lot of room for really niche people. And, libertarian socialists, we're a fairly niche audience. So I think that now there's just more room. And so there is, a handful of them. And they are growing. There's, every aspect of YouTube is growing at all times. As percentage, I'm not sure. I guess going from 0 to 1% is still like, a huge gain. But I don't know. Sometimes I don't realize how big YouTube is, and it feels small. And then I realize things like makeup channels exist and PewDiePie exist, and the numbers of how this whole site works really blows me away. The next question I have is, does Donald Trump and history match? And if so, give an example. And I think that Donald Trump, maybe I know that I kind of got a little crazy near the end of the year with Donald Trump related content, but I did that for a purpose, not just because, he's terrifying, but because Trump is one of those types of candidates that I think wouldn't have been elected if people understood history better. He's a candidate that really isn't understandable by modern context. Like if you're like me, I'm 28 now, I guess, and I have been alive for a handful of elections, but really I've only been there and thinking about the last three. So Bush's re-election and Obama's election, Obama's re-election, and now this election. And then again, I was very young in the 2004 election, so really the two Obama elections and this Trump election are the big ones that I've been around for. And if you look at 2004, 2008, 2012, you see that your concept of what a presidential election is actually rather small. It's a relatively homogenous group of very well vetted, very certain people of a certain age running for president, and really that's your limits. And having a longer view makes you say, well, there have been Donald Trump-esque presidents in the past. The first one that comes to mind, if you want to use kind of the crazy example of Trump being this outsider person who bucks the political order and is representing the whole drain. That's the most optimistic view of Trump possible, you could see him as Andrew Jackson type figure, who's in the context of the 1820s was responsible for horrible actions towards Native Americans, most specifically the Trail of Tears and the war against the Seminole people in Florida, but also was known for getting rid of land requirements for voting and a whole bunch of stuff to open up the democratic process to more people. And he always kind of saw himself as the president of the people, not the politicians. And that is one way that you can make a comparison. Now, Andrew Jackson's presidency was extremely combative and controversial, and there was basically just war in Congress all the time, and he vetoed a whole bunch of bills, and he dissolved the national bank, and all sorts of really crazy stuff happened during his presidency, which I worry a little bit about. The other historical presidency that you can actually go to in talking about Trump is that if you look at his cabinet appointments and the kind of way that he's governing, and he governs in this way, it seems that he wants to have a lot of powerful business interests at heart when making decisions, and also having a very inwardly focused foreign policy, and just having proponent for extreme wealth inequality, extreme unregulated capitalism, and kind of this crony system where you have a whole bunch of billionaires running the country, and some questionable racial opinions, which really puts Trump. If you want to build a context, you can make a good comparison with. They're all kind of interchangeable presidents, but a lot of these late 19th century kind of post Ulysses Grant, before McKinley or before Teddy Roosevelt period, where you see a lot of these presidents that were they're the products of something called Tammany Hall. There was this time when actual bribery, open bribery was common, and that presidents more or less just were thinking that the role of the president was to just let the economy, the free market solve everything. And it led to a period of gigantic economic growth, but also gigantic wealth inequality. This is a period that's technically called the Gilded Age. And a lot of the times presidents basically just use the power of the treasury of the United States to make them and their friends rich. which had weird, weird impacts on society. So the next question is, will YouTube become more privatized to make profit? YouTube is already privatized. It's a private corporation. And the private corporation, like, it's already doing some stuff with, like, trying to get people onto Red and move into kind of a more Netflixy type direction. But I imagine that YouTube knows that its key to its success is the more direct connection between creator and consumer, and promoting kind of this very meritocratic way of growing talent and growing new genre of film, and really this new unthought of. Just a second, I'm gonna get a little bit of water. This really kind of unprecedented field of medium. It's a new media. It's not TV. It's not movies. It's not anything that we've ever seen before. This kind of weird thing, and YouTube's also trying to find a way to make money, because they're not making money right now, which is really strange. And so, I don't know. I think that YouTube knows that it's somewhere between television and something else, and I don't think they're gonna start making you have to pay to be a YouTube creator or anything like that, because that would really undermine a lot what YouTube goes for. But do expect more ads and more product integration and things like that, because they are struggling to find a way to make a for-profit corporation out of it. Do you think historical awareness among the general population is decreasing? Oh, it's kind of. So there's some cases where there's things that are intentionally being forgotten as far as historical consciousness. Like, one of the reasons that the war on terror or the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan had these embedded journalists, for example, was to combat Vietnam syndrome and to stop people from criticizing war by seeing things. And there's been an attempt to reimagine things like the Vietnam War for the purposes of the purposes of letting us go to war over and over again. And I don't know, it seems like around the world, the World War II generation is dying off. And so as people as fascism and stuff like that moves into being, fascism, communism, all these things start moving into being historical rather than things in lived memory, you do have this sort of forgetting that, fascism, really, really bad. I haven't seen a new rise in Stalinism, but, who knows? I don't know what okay, so I'm being asked what my thoughts are on the Voynich manuscript. I don't think I know what that is, but I'm just going to do a really quick search to see if it's something that I've seen and done before. Okay. Yeah, I've seen this before. I don't have many thoughts on it. I don't really know much context, but I feel like I will, because one of my future video ideas to engage with at some point, it might not be this year, it might be next year, is the ancient aliens theory. And the Voynich manuscript is one of the major things about people saying, oh, aliens visited these people in this time, because look, there's some weird circles in the drawings. Look forward to a future video on that one, because I feel like I need to do that more research than I have here off the top of my head. The Communist Party of Japan is slowly growing, but more faster every year. Here's some more info. In 2008, they got 1,000 new members per month. In 2015, they had represented in every. So I think so. That's interesting. Communism in Japan would be a very peculiar thing to think about. Sadly, I don't really get a lot of news about what happens in Japan. Like from the vantage point of North America, Japan seems like this like thing that's just like a pure creation of pop culture, and it's just pop culture and nothing else. And I know that like Japan's going through some major political change. There's these ideas of like, should Japan become more militarist and more interventionist in the world? And I know that it also has a very pro-business government from time to time, and some really serious issues when it comes to immigration and culture, and the coming demographic collapse because their aging population is getting so crazy. So that is interesting. I'd wonder what Japanese communists talk about. I wonder what their issues are. That'd be cool to find out. Uh, do you think that politics is just switching between left and right over time rapidly? That's not a bad way to see it. There's always like, whenever there is a left or right wing government in power, you usually have a growing counter movement going on at any given time, because when you govern, you make mistakes, and when mistakes happen, the other side will just hop on it, and usually that boils over into the switching of governments, and then the opposite happens. And so you saw through all of Obama's presidency, for example. I keep making American references because I'm a U.S. historian, so this is like the thing I follow the most. But you see like a growing right-wing backlash, and now you've had the right-wing take over. So now you're probably going to see a growing left-wing backlash, which is good, because the left in America has gotten far too complacent. Is it getting faster is a good question. It doesn't, I don't know. That'd be good. That'd be good to find out. Oh, here's the continued thing. They got major billboards in Japan. That's cool. Do you think that that Trump's Taiwan call was a mistake / blunder, or a move to intimidate China? Okay, so to give you guys context, Trump tweeted the other day that he had just gotten a congratulatory phone call from the president of Taiwan. And Taiwan is this weird, it's this island off the coast of China, and both the People's Republic of China and Taiwan both think that they're the rightful government of China. And for the longest time, the U.S. has been going by this thing called a one China policy, which means they're only going to acknowledge one, and they acknowledge the People's Republic of China, the communist one, the one that you recognize with the red flag and stuff. And there's a lot of room, or there's a lot of tension about this. So is Trump trying to intimidate China by thinking he'll re-recognize Taiwan? That's a hard one to break out, because I don't know, Trump is I don't know if Trump is that savvy. He doesn't seem to understand the kind of stuff that's going on for the most part. So I just imagine that it was just him kind of stumbling into it, but who knows? Maybe he's a secret genius. Any Canadian topics that I feel like talking about? The Canadian topics that I feel like talking about. I have been wanting to do a Badass Women in History about Viola Davis. She's really cool. She's kind of like I don't know, to give you Americans an example, she's kind of like the Rosa Parks of Canada. She's a black woman who got thrown out of a movie theater in Nova Scotia, and led to a whole bunch of really interesting stuff with the relation between African Canadians and the white population in Nova Scotia. I definitely think there's room to talk about something like Riel's Rebellion, Louis Riel, and the interesting Métis people. A more in-depth video about the 1995 Quebec referendum, maybe an explainer video about Quebec and Quebec nationalism would be useful. I was thinking of making a bunch of videos about the provinces, individually, so that Americans could understand that Canada's really diverse and really varied. But I don't think those would be very successful, so I've kind of put them on a lower priority for now. and maybe the October crisis would be an interesting talk. Just I don't know, Canada struggles because Canada is a weird country for relevance in the world. And it'd be hard to, I mean, I know a lot of Canadian historians. As a historian who's Canadian and works in like a Canadian history department, there's a lot, I don't know, I'd have to, I conversations with Canadian historians, which I don't do enough to think of some like really cool things to talk about. Thoughts on Justin Trudeau and on Tom Ford? Well, I can tell you a bit about Justin Trudeau. So, for you guys out there, Justin Trudeau is the current Canadian Prime Minister. And yeah, so Justin Trudeau is the current Canadian Prime Minister. He was elected at the end of 2015. And he's the son of one of our most like well-remembered prime ministers, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And he is relatively well-remembered, but there's some places like Alberta that really don't like him. However, Justin Trudeau got elected because it was a three-way election, and there's this idea that the Liberals had kind of shot themselves in the foot into obscurity, and so the Liberals were kind of on the backseat. They were the third party in Parliament for the first time in Canadian history. And the NDP had lost their most charismatic leader, Jack Layton, who passed away in 2011, right after the previous election. He basically got Quebec, or got the NDP, or like our like kind of social democratic party, to opposition, and then died of prostate cancer just a few months later. And the new leader has always kind of struggled to maintain the big party coalition that was put together. And the Conservatives had a majority government. And the last 4 years, Harper had basically been running roughshod over the country, and like everybody hated him. So like everyone knew Harper's time was up, but they didn't really know if the NDP or Liberals were going to be our response. And Justin Trudeau was very charismatic, and he came through with, a lot of these bold progressive plans. And then he got elected, and everyone was super excited. And he did some cool stuff, like have gender parity in his cabinet. He got the first Sikh Minister of Defense. All that stuff really, really good. And then he promised stuff like getting rid of first past the post electoral system and move to proportional representation or something. He promised legalization of marijuana. He promised a whole bunch, like returning funding to science and more funding for the CBC, and making Canada Post more public. Like a lot of like very progressive agendas. He'd be considered left of Bernie Sanders in the United States. And then he said he was going to do all this, and he got elected. And then we waited, and then we waited, and then we waited. And about a year later, they finally started doing stuff, and he started outrolling this like super right-wing agenda, like with the Access pipeline being shut down in the U.S. He like started up 2 new pipelines, and when it came to electoral reform, he like just completely walked back from it, and he's dragging his feet on a lot of the major issues that he got elected on, and a lot of people voted for him because they thought this would be the chance that we could get, proportional representation, which is what a lot of people wanted, and it's not happening. And so I feel like he's disappointing his voter base in a way that's probably going to be very damaging to him in 2019. And if the Conservatives can get themselves together, they might get back in charge, which would make me very sad. A question about what if Bolivia never lost any of their lands. I'm really not an expert on Latin American history, so I can't really speak much to that. On the EU, I think the EU, I mean, I like the concept of it. I like the idea of how about, Europe doesn't have constant nationalist turf wars that they've been having since the Middle Ages, and instead focus on like building up together and being part of like a united front. I'm not sure I like its extremely harsh neoliberal conservative economic agenda. It's way too afraid of inflation. It's way too afraid of a lot of things. And that part kind of freaks me out. But, I mean, that's reform. That's not like replacement. UK leaving it, I don't know. UK, like, I think it was a bad decision for the UK. I think that they're going to come to regret it in a long enough time span. You also had thoughts on Tom Ford. I think you're thinking about Rob Ford. And, I mean, I live near Toronto, and he was quite a character. It's sad that he's dead. Yeah, no one deserves to die. He died in a pretty nasty fashion. He had a very long succumbing to cancer, which I wouldn't wish on anybody. But, I mean, he was a pretty terrible mayor. He was pretty corrupt. And he made our entire country look like a freaking joke. And he's kind of a representation of, like, what, the right wing going crazy over going over Canada would have result on. Okay. Oh man. So many just like thoughts on things. Okay. I'm gonna have to move quicker through these things, or else we're gonna be here all day. All right. So, what are you planning for the near future? I have plans to talk about that later. Will you do a video on the October Revolution? If you're talking about the Soviet Revolution, hold still. I have it on very good authority that you will be very satisfied in the next few months. Actually, probably very soon. What impact has Trump had on the nationalists in the EU? I imagine it's galvanized them in some way. How likely is a second American Civil War or a second Chinese Civil War? American Civil War, I really highly doubt, because it'd be really tough with the way the United States works for there to be a violent separation with how advanced and huge the U.S. military is. The closest thing I could think to a U.S. Civil War would be maybe if a state tried to secede, but I don't think that it could happen very easily. And if it did, it would be under contexts that would make things so different that I wouldn't even know what's going on. Like maybe if California tries to like go for its like independence referendum, I don't think we live in a world where if California secedes, that the United States will just invade it. I feel like the world would not be on board for something like that anymore. I feel like our days of like big American civil wars are over. If anything, I see more issues in the US having a sort of like 1991 style collapse, like the Soviet Union, where just like the authority of Washington just kind of collapses. But even then, that's a fair. As far as Chinese Civil War goes, I don't even want to talk about it because I am not really good at talking about China. I read something like years ago about how China is this country that goes through periods of unification and division. And so, there's like the cycle that happens in Chinese history and that, it'll happen again. But the current state of China is so opaque that's really hard to tell what's going on. But I could see a whole bunch of crazy stuff happening in China just like overnight, and we wouldn't even know what was going on until it already happened, because they keep so much under wraps that it's really hard to see what's going on in there. They're still very much a communist country, They're very much isolated from the rest of the world when it comes to communication, information, and openness. Thoughts on New Zealand? I like New Zealand. It looks really pretty, and I want to go. But I know that they also have some really cool stuff with like representation and relationships with their indigenous population, which I think is really cool. Did you do the Elections Canada survey? I don't think so. I'm not sure what that was. Your overall opinion of the United Kingdom? I think that the United Kingdom is a cool country. I've been there before. It's really pretty, really great culture. The people there are very fun, pragmatic people, and I love the country to death. I think that it has a lot of issues with internal division, and it has a lot of issues with a kind of xenophobic fear of the other. But also, it seems like that is very common in England, but not in many other places. And with the Brexit, I fear that the idea of a United Kingdom might be problematic, and you might have some like splintering off and stuff like that. Oh, cheers from Alberta! Yay! Oh man, I have a lot of family lives in Alberta. Okay. I like your video on neoconservatives. How about a video on the many facets of socialism? That is one I've considered actually a couple times. I'd have to see the ways to do it right, but I do make some references to it in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. And it was a survey that asked citizens their thoughts on electoral reform. The survey closed yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry. Scottish independence. So Scottish independence, I think, is a very likely thing to happen in my lifetime, especially with Brexit, because Scotland is far more left-wing than England and far more supportive of the European system, that I could see Scotland very easily having another referendum fairly soon and it passing in like a post-Brexit world. I hear the UK lies about their unemployment rate. I can't comment on that one. All right, so to kind of go back onto the itinerary here, I do have a bunch of people that I want to thank, because Step Back has grown so much this year because of the hard work and dedication of a lot of really great people who have really made this channel something greater. So I want to thank Jonathan Moore, the guy behind Soliloquy. Love the guy to death. He's given me so much great advice. He's one of the smartest people about successful YouTubing that I've ever talked to, and he's really great. Will Fox, my partner in crime. We have a podcast together called YouTubers United. We've done 2 collaborations in 2016. Both of them, one of them really resulted in huge, like a completely new existence for both of our channels. Him and I, the closest of friends. I really look forward to doing more stuff with him in 2017. Kelly, my wife, who I know is watching this and forwarding questions. And I just want to say that this channel would be completely a different thing. It would be much lower quality. It would not have been as successful if I didn't have somebody on my team, in my house, making me better at everything that I can do every day. And it would just not be the same thing without you. We create EDU. It's a Slack community of educational YouTubers. They've been really supportive and quick for advice, and I've made a lot of really great friends on there. It's a great place to help people out. I want to thank Xander, who is the guy behind Art Explains, and his wonderful video that he made for my channel on organ transplantation, but also extremely funny, really great channel. His channel's Art Explains. I suggest you go check him out. He's funny. He talks about psychology and like weird stuff. I don't know. He's just a great person to have had in my life, and he's really made Step Back more fun to do. And Inez Dawson from Draw Curiosity, who agreed to voice my video on Aisha when I really wanted a woman's voice to talk about someone like this. So just being really supportive, helpful, and just like, really fun person to hang out with. The history department at the University of Western Ontario, where I do my PhD, for really supporting the excited and having my back. And I want to thank my patrons, the people who are actually putting their money down to say, I believe in Step Back so much that I want to support its existence with actual money. And so I want to thank all of my current patrons, my parents, who have really helped out, Wayne Lewis, Fedor Steeman, who is a really funny guy. He's got a channel too. He's really great. You have Syrian now out. I didn't know how to pronounce that one, but Thibaut Narm, Thomas Bauzanek, Bo Mertz, my supervisor Rob McDougall, Todd Kurt, Daniel Davis, and Michael Lockhart. I want to thank you guys so much for doing really great stuff for really helping me and making this all possible. So I have a few more questions. Stefan Thorvaldsen, one of my longest and most dedicated viewers. I made Iceland video for him, and he wants thoughts on Iceland. And I don't know, Iceland just seems super cool. I love that one of the largest corporations in the country is a video game company that makes one game, and they have an actual monument to it. I think the whole like EVE Online thing is super cool. The fact that it was like this weird, the fact, like as I said in my video on it, I like its connection with like 1,000 years ago. It seemed like this country that's been like sometimes something forgotten about in a lot of ways, and so it has like a much deeper connection with like its deeper history, which I think is really cool. What if New England seceded during the War of 1812? You're gonna have to go ask Cody at the Alternate History Hub what had happened there, but I imagine that an independent New England would be a pretty powerful place. Are you willing to consider what if the Holocaust never happened, or if Palestine won the 6 Days War? Again, I'm not really too keen on doing counterfactuals. I think that they're a cool mental exercise, but they require research and like a little bit more nuance than like, just off the cuff answers here. What do you think of the decline of secularism in Turkey and the rise of secularism in Tunisia? I can't speak much to Tunisia, but the whole Erdogan thing that's been going on in Turkey is really, really eye-opening and really terrifying, especially because I imagine Ataturk is like turning over in his grave thinking about this guy. Turkey is a really key and important country and a really great symbol to like, it's an ancient country and it's been around for basically since like, the 1400s, 1300s, no, even earlier, but in some form or another. But Turkey being secular or losing its secularness, it feels like it's losing, or it's to like, this path to modernity. That's kind of scary. Regardless, I love the show. I teach high school American history. I love your passion. It motivates me to make my students enjoy history. That's really great. I think that if there's a high school American teacher who is watching my channel and liking it, that I don't even know what to say to that. I think what you're doing is extremely important, and I really hope that you don't let teachers tell you otherwise, because history, especially to people like to Americans about their own history, is so difficult and so politically important. I don't think as many people realize how much you are at the center of like a political, you are the entire political war that's going on in the United States. And I think that the work of U.S. history teachers is key for like, really building that wisdom and context. And I'm really glad that if you're watching my channel, it means that you're like getting away from, like, in 1492, Columbus personally discovered the United States, and then America single-handedly defeated Hitler and communists and all that kind of stuff. So I think that, like, I'm glad that there's someone who follows a channel like mine teaching American history. I feel like your students are probably uh, they probably have a really good teacher. Majority country will America invade next? I mean, the low-hanging fruit would be possibly Syria. If the Syrian civil war doesn't calm down, or it flares up, or ISIS makes another big stand, Trump has said he's more than willing to get involved in that. All right. What do you think of the Turks and Caicos Islands, and will they join Canada? That's actually a fun story. That would make a good video. But yeah, there's Caribbean islands called the Turks and Caicos that are, or they're either independent or they're like kind of still semi-attached to Britain. And they've been wanting or discussing joining Canada for ages. I think like it actually has popular support in the Turks and Caicos. Something, one thing or another always stops it from coming in. But the idea of Canada having a Caribbean island is interesting. I don't know. I'm not. It seems like there's too many barriers to actually doing it. But how do you feel about growing independent news networks? Depends upon what you mean by that. I think they're natural economic response to the way that news works. News has a much lower profit margin, and so the idea of big corporate news is in this weird flux, and I don't think that even what's happening now is going to stick. It'd be interesting to see what state journalism has in the long term. Canada turns 150 this year. Any plans on a video? I mean, I probably should. There's going to be so much stuff about Canada this year. I'm actually kind of struggling right now. I'm struggling to think of like a really juicy Canadian history topic that feels very step backy to do. But if one comes to me before like June, then I should definitely make it like, the big Canada Day video. Thoughts on SpaceX? For someone who doesn't like private companies all that much, the idea that SpaceX is like our only SpaceX and like the Musk empire, only hope we have for doing climate change, solving climate change, and for getting into space and everything like that, shows that like, man, governments have really dropped the ball in doing stuff. Cover what happened in 1848 and the implication for politics around the world today. Again, I will say that there's something down the pipe on that you should hang on to that idea, because there's something coming that will have something doing. And do DIAP. The whole idea of getting away from military history and wars and generals, then doing a video on Canada's personal Canada's like failed attempt at a D-Day landing. Ugh. I don't know. There'd have to be I'm not against doing like a World War II video, but there would have to be something different than like Canada was involved in this battle and then they lost. Like there would need to be something kind of bigger to make it work. My favorite political thinker and leader, I like Noam Chomsky a lot as far as living leaders or living political thinkers go. I mean, he's the first one that comes to mind in a lot of cases. I like Pyotr Kropotkin and a lot of stuff he's written about. As far as, do you like the Queen being the head of state in Canada? Next to no impact. In a lot of ways, it's just window dressing, so it doesn't really bother me much. Though it's symbolic relationship with France, or its symbolic relationship with England, makes the French in our country probably not as happy. But again, I think it's just not, it doesn't have as much weight in my mind anyway. Okay, so look back at British technicalities and details. First contacts, please. Oh my. I think what you just asked for is like a 4-hour documentary. Britain you do realize like Britain basically like, has conquered almost the entire planet at one point or another. All right, so I do have a couple things to the next little bit to talk about, and that is I have some cool stats about Step Back in 2016. So compared to 2015, to start, time watched. So the amount of time people have sat down and watched Step Back videos, we have collected in 2016 1,293,830 minutes of watch time, which is 10.3 years. So that means that on average, at any given time in the last year, 10 people were watching a Step Back video, which is pretty cool. Also a 15,528% increase from 2015. So it's been a pretty good year. 341,196 views and 14,153 subscribers, which, given that I'm just a little over 14,300 subscribers right now, means that almost all of the growth of this channel happened in 2016, which is huge. So that's like the crazy superlatives that have happened. So the next little project, we have one more subscriber, or one more question. One more question, and then we're going to talk about the top 10 videos of the 2016. So, and we're actually going to watch them. They're going to, you guys, we get to reminisce. So what topic are you writing your PhD on? So I'm writing my PhD on September 11th and memory studies. So my entire concept is that in history right now, in like the field of doing research, there's this really hard limit that people are hitting when you do history past about 1984, where evolution means that there's so much more archive material that you hit the limits of what human beings are able to process. And when you talk about the time of the internet, you have so much data that you have this issue where you can actually draw multiple conclusions that are contradictory to each other, because there's just so much data that if you're not rigorous in some really intense way, conclusion you want. And I'm trying to solve a lot of those methodological issues by taking like machine learning algorithms and like big data kind of work that's been done and applying it to historical events. And I'm doing a research project on how does like an event become a historical event. I have records of 9/11 from an event unfolding right now, a historical event. So I'm trying to use or solve the big data issues to show step by step event historical. And I'm very early on in it right now, but that's like the big. Thank you for Aisha, and I hope you make more videos about the Arabs such as Kali bin al-Wahid and al-Razi. I wish you success in what you wish for. That's very nice. Thank you. I'm actually very proud of the Aisha video. Speaking of which, let's go into our top 10 2016 videos. And number 10, let me just go onto my handy dandy video manager here to get the URL. So our number 10 video for 2016 is actually the Aisha video. And so we're going to watch that together. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about it. I have some comments and things that I want to say about it afterwards. So just bear with me as I get this whole thing. Okay, so I realized that you guys have just been staring at my face for the last few minutes. Well, I was calmly thinking that I was somehow sharing the video with you guys. Yeah. All right, so let's just do it this way. I'm just going to go make this video, make this window its own window, and then we'll watch the video on the screen. Sorry, this is my first attempt doing a fancy Google Hangout, so there we go. So let's see if this works. All right. Okay. So I guess we're not going to have a MTV 2016 countdown thing because I would have to go into the thing and work it out. But, you know, something for the future. But let's get back on track. So let's talk about the top 10. It's my number 10 video of 2016, Aisha. And so I'm just going to go and grab some notes that I've taken on it because I am super awesome on that stuff. So I have a handful of things to say about the Aisha video that are important to know. But the first thing is that this is the video that I did with Ines from Draw Curiosity, which I thought was a great precedent to set for the rest of the Badass Women of History series that I'm doing. And doing Aisha, or having Aisha as my as the video, I felt like needed a lot of sensitivity, a lot of careful discussion. I knew it was going to be a difficult video to do. And I thought that if I'm going to talk about Badass Women of History, maybe I should do my own bit to kind of help out with, or do what I can to give more voices to women in society. Because if you hear the story of a lot of women in history, you find that a lot of them, their stories are just kind of ignored. They just weren't paid attention to. And so I decided to make it a rule, starting with the Aisha video, that every time I do a Badass Women of History, I'm going to the voice of a small YouTube channel. And when I first approached Ines to do this video, she had about 100 subscribers on Draw Curiosity. And her videos were great, and I thought she just needed exposure. But between her sending me the recording and the video coming out, she got featured on Tom Scott's channel and got like a clean 10,000 subscribers in a few days. So she didn't really need my help in the end after all. And so, but I'm really grateful that she lent her voice to something like this. And I would say that Aisha, the reason I did the video on Aisha is because in Islamic history, that is a very, very common Islamophobic criticism that Muhammad and Aisha, or that Aisha was when Muhammad was born, or was married to her, because she was significantly younger than him. The records are a little fuzzy, and I talked about that, but I did not shy away from the idea of her being between 6 and 7 and 19, all over the place. Neither of them are all that great. He was in his 50s. It's crazy. It's really something different. It's a big contentious issue in Islam. Muslims are very wary about talking about it, but it's also she's a very important figure in the history of early Islam. And on YouTube, when you have so much Islamophobia, you don't really get to know the story of Aisha and all the amazing things she did in her life. And so I didn't want her being potentially a child bride to subtract from the really important and interesting life that she had, and that's why I told her story. There are some things that I did that I was a little wary about. So there's a very strong anti-iconography stance, in that it is considered very, very impolite or blasphemous even to depict holy figures in Islam with their face, to draw them at all. And if you'll notice in the video, I mentioned that I don't show many of the important figures. I show them by their calligraphy. But I know that for the video to work, I had to draw Aisha. I had to draw Ali. they're key figures in the whole back and forth, in the whole story of the first fitna. And also, she was a very, also there is a precedent of these Shia drawings in Iran of Islamic figures. If you just like, they censor the face or something. But I knew that, like, I'm not a Muslim, and I thought it was a really tough decision, but I decided to draw Aisha and Ali so that the video on a level that most people could understand. I feel like if I did something like draw Aisha without a face, or draw Ali without a face, or calligraphy moving around, it would not have worked as well as having the people. But when I could, I did go back to not showing them if I could get away with it. And that was basically my my plan. Make something that was accessible and showed the really interesting events of Islamic history without being, or as being as respectful to Muslims as possible. And it resulted in that. And I got called a Muslim apologist anyway, so I guess, but it just does what it does anyway. I did make a few mistakes. I was told that there was some discussions about Isra and Mira, which is a moment it traveled to a very far away mosque and basically went on this spiritual journey. And I said that that Abu Bakr went with him, and apparently he did not. But it is key to know that Abu Bakr and Muhammad were close companions either way, and he was extremely important in the story of early Islam. All right. So that was number 10. So let's talk about number 9. So number 9 on my list was my most recent video, alt-right. So this video was quite the experience. He says, ironically. So it was a video that was the result. I did my contribution to the Project for Awesome in 2016, Southern Poverty Law Center. And one of the things that the Southern Poverty Law Center did is track hate groups. And they had a big list of all the hate groups in America, and they were really neatly categorized. And I did a lot of research on them for the video. And a lot of that research never made it into this really, really tight video because they only wanted like 4 minutes. So wanted to turn that into a step back video on its own, a history of American hate groups. And it was super fun up until its release. So the video is the only video on my channel that has more dislikes than likes. And I saw that it got a significant amount of traffic from the alt-right subreddit and from 4chan. So that was fun. I got more anti-Semitic comments than most non-Jews get in their lives, I think. And it's the only video I have that's more disliked than liked, and it was quite controversial. And a lot of people, I would say that hate comments don't bother me, but like the people who felt disappointed that I was kind of soapboxing on an educational channel, that stuff kind of got to me a little bit. But I think that I'm pretty proud of the video and how it turned out. I think that it talked about the current, like everyone's talking about hate groups and everyone's talking about the real weirdness of our current society. And it's not without context, and I really want to give that context. Maybe in the future I'll know to not actively complain about current politicians in my videos. I think I learned my lesson, but I had a bit to get off my chest in that season anyway. And I don't feel too bad about it anymore. And it's number 9. It was very successful. It actually got a lot of views and it got a lot of attention. So I think that in the end, I'm not remorseful about it at all or anything. So number 8 is Why Politics Matters, the Colfax Massacre. And I came across the Colfax Massacre video when I was doing I was TAing a course on U.S. history. I've been TAing this course for 3 years, but then we got a new professor who was teaching, and he did a lecture, and he talked about Reconstruction. He talked about the Colfax Massacre, and the story was so immediately compelling. Video about it, and so I wrote that down, and it resulted in this video. It was also my first video with a new art style, talking about Trump's racism in a fairly, and it's the first video where I got accused of having too much politics in their history, which to me is the weirdest thing to say, because politics and history are so intertwined that you'd be really remiss to not think that that it's not significant, or that it's somehow you can have history without politics. And especially this channel talks about trying to get you to understand what the world is like today as a result, and it's just I don't know. It's just a confusing thing. They'll say you're not being objective, but objectivity is not really a thing that's actually possible anyway. And there's an actual. I was TAing on main campus. Oh man, there's an actual Western student here. That's funny. So I definitely think that they're intertwined, that my position wouldn't change. You have your positions, and I thought hiding it wasn't going to have anything different. And I think that we need a lot of history to understand Trump, so I don't feel bad about making this video either. The Massacre video is rather cool. I think it's a pretty important. I think it's pretty important for the current context and everything. All right. Number 7 was my Columbus series, part 3. So this was my contribution to the Columbus series that I had worked on in 2015, and then kind of put on hold for a number of months. I mean basically almost a year. And I was anxious to get back into it because they're amongst my more successful videos. A lot of people came to my channel directly because of it. And so I wanted to make another installment because I had a whole bunch of ideas for episodes, and I just needed to get back onto it. And so I did it, and I made that video, and it was great. I was really happy with the response to it. I think the really cool idea of the Inuits visiting Europeans even knew there was a new world was a pretty cool concept, and I really wanted to get that across. And I have that. So Ahmad Cindy, you're asking, what are your projects for 2017? We're going to talk about that. That's my last thing. Last little bit. So Number 6 was my video on Rastafarianism. It was a fairly successful video, actually. I'm just going to go find my notes on the Rastafarian video. So I did get a comment on that asking whether or not my character's thingy is a beard or a mouth, and it is most definitely a beard. There is no mouth. I tried drawing a mouth and it didn't really look very good. I got a lot of requests to talk more about Ethiopia and Zoroastrianism. Japan has like the reason someone was like claiming that like, oh, Rastafarianism is not in Japan because there's not very many religious people at all. But Japan also has like a weird proclivity for strange religions. So I know the Raelians are big there. A lot of Japanese cults and stuff like that. All right. Number 5 on the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This was this is probably one of the fastest turnarounds I ever had on a video. It came out in the summertime when I had a lot of time to do something like that. But I wanted to do a collaboration with a channel called Tell Me Why. And I had supplied my voice for a couple of his videos, but he was about to make a video on how nuclear explosions work, something on nuclear weapons. And I had to make a video to talk about it. And I was like, all right, I'm getting ready. I'm working on this video. I had a 2-week schedule for making things. And he's like, oh, no, I need it like by this weekend. And I'm like, okay. Very fast, but it turned out to be really good. It's a really good debate. If you're interested in more stuff in that vein, I would definitely recommend checking out The Untold History of Us, or The Untold History of the United States, which is done by Oliver Stone, and you can find it on Netflix. And while, Oliver Stone does veer into conspiracy theories from time to time, it's a pretty good series. And we had a really good time watching it, my wife and I, and we heartily recommend it to people. And if you liked that video, it's a good recommendation. Next recommendation. Number 4 is my 1491 video. So this was a video I think I called The Truth About Native Americans Before Columbus. Because, making videos about Columbus seems to get me a lot of attention. So I guess I had to go into it at some point. So there was some discussion about debates, like what would be debates over what would be the population of pre-Columbian America. I think in the end I used the most extreme estimates. And probably if I had, longer videos in the past, I would have gotten to some sort of deeper discussion, about the population figures and how they're all estimates and how that works. But back at the time when I made that video, a little bit in the mindset of making shorter videos, which I'm not anymore. So probably if I had done that video again, it'd be very different in that sense. There's also a really cool story about how the reforestation, so the regrowth of trees from Native Americans no longer being around to burn down the forest in order to cultivate the land, led to a huge amount of carbon dioxide getting sucked out of the atmosphere and locked down in these trees, which some people blame for the mini ice age that happened shortly afterwards, which is this period where temperatures cooled until about the 19th century when carbon dioxide warmed it up again. And I think that if you want to read more on topics like this, I would recommend checking out the book 1491 and Steel. Those are the 2 books that largely inspired that video, and I think that they're really good. So I got a question asking if I've considered making a politics channel. And that's kind of what my old channel was like, and it wasn't very successful. I mean, I love talking off the cuff about politics and doing hot takes and stuff, but I also know that very few people care about my political opinion. I feel like if I did a channel like that, it would take away from the Step Back History channel a bit, and I feel bad about that. And I think that it's just not my expertise. I'm very good at giving the deeper context. If I was just talking about politics, I feel like I would just be doing hot takes, and that wouldn't be great. I have some questions about whether I've considered making up, or whether the history of the Japanese Red Army. This is the first time I've heard about a Japanese Red Army existing, so I can't really speak to that. A lot of questions about Japan today. The Black Army / Free Territories of Russia. Again, new to me. I'll definitely get someone to write those down. Kelly, if you can, write those down for me, and I'll take a look at them a bit later and see if they might be worthy of investigation. Because these are like the thing about red armies and black armies and military stuff is that I don't want to approach military history unless I have a really good reason. I feel like military history is one of the things in history that has been relatively done and redone and overdone. And unless there's like a bigger thing than just like what battles happened, who won, and how they won them, then I would be kind of hesitant to do that again. All right, my number 3 video is my video on Sikhism. Today, that's probably one of my most successful videos time, I think. And it constantly gets people searching for, or who are searching on, what is Sikhism. So let me just see if I can find the notes I took on the Sikhism video. All right, so there was a couple things. I did talk about some of the requirements when it comes to behavior and dress on Sikhism. I talked about them as if they're requirements, but there was a big back and forth debate in my comment section that basically amounted to that these are not required requirements, best practices, and that not all Sikhs do them, and not all Sikhs think it's like necessary to do them. And that's one thing that I think that if I could add nuance to the video, I would. As far as Baha'i, I got a lot of requests to talk about Baha'i in that video, and I have taken that under consideration. So if there wasn't a video on Baha'i in the next while. I also completely flub pronunciation because, of course, as a white person with an anglicized name, of course I screwed up words in Punjabi. Of course, I'm terrible. But what can you do? Sikhism as a way of life. So there's a lot of discussions about like Eastern religions as being not so much religions but ways of life. I think this speaks a little bit to what I've just discussed with in my video about voodoo, actually, about exclusivist religions versus like kind of all-encompassing religions. I feel like Eastern Dharmic religions have a different concept of what, who has a monopoly on truth and who's right and who's wrong. Sikhism kind of is somewhere between and Islam in inspiration, and I think that it has a little bit to that, but I feel like that like a way of life is a term that we use because we've put such a pejorative feeling on religion. That's why there's a lot of people who say they're not religious, they're spiritual or something like that. And I guess like it's just like a mincing of terms in a lot of ways. All right, I'm just going to, yeah. I am sorry that there's like I have her hardcore blacklist words in the for my comments, and unfortunately this translates over to the chat room, and so there's a lot of people who are getting their stuff like blacklisted that are like, you know, someone just said Black Army history would be a badass video, and it's, you know, a lot of video suggestion ideas. Thoughts on the COD wars? I know Stefan. I know that I've actually been kind of enamored by this book that I really want to read called, like, it's like a history of COD and like how important COD is in world history. And I kind of really want to make a video about it, but I also know that nobody would want to watch that video, and so like I'm on like a difficult situation there. It's like kind of a difficult situation, but I'd like to see that happen. It'd be fun. And all right, my number 2 video is my video on 9/11, the 9/11 truth movement. So this one has been a surprisingly big success. I mean, I guess not super surprising because it was 9/11. It came out near 9/11, and it was about the 9/11 truth movement. So, you know, you really open to getting a lot of attention. But it got really positive response. It was my first video after making my Patreon account, where I updated my art style and moved to the Adobe Creative Suite, which was really fun. There's a lot of questions about Building 7, and like without getting into a lot of detail, and collapsed, and everyone says that it like the truther response is that the official response is that it was a fire that knocked it down. But what happens is there's actually not a lot of photography of this, but Building 7 actually had huge chunks of debris from the falling towers, giant chunks of it, and it was structurally unsound, and it collapsed. That plus a fire, I suppose. And so Building 7 actually suffered a lot of damage as a result of like having a tower fall on it. That is like one of the major reasons why that would happen. Jet fuel and like, you know, the whole jet fuel can't melt steel beams thing. Jet fuel can not melt steel beams, that is true, but most of its strength would have been taken away at the temperature that jet fuel does burn at. So that's kind of a gag. And the Pentagon, you know, again, the Pentagon video, there's like there was supposed to be like security camera video of the Pentagon hitting it, and it was taken away, and it was destroyed, or it was taken away in the investigation. It was never released to the public. This is one of those cases where I think that the United States keeping itself too secretive is like feeding conspiracy theories. Like I feel like conspiracy theories feed in like black areas of information, and in the case of a lot of things to do with U.S. foreign policy, police investigations, they're so secretive that they create the gray areas in which all the conspiracy theories grow. And that's why Area 51, a place where they, you know, built the B-2 bomber, is, or sorry, it's the B-2, the stealth bomber. I can't remember its name right now, but because it was all under wraps, of course, UFO. of course, UFOs. So I feel like the whole taking away that one video of the plane hitting the Pentagon, and then not releasing it after the investigation was over is kind of them, inviting conspiracy in a way. And my number one video was, of course, my video on ISIS. And I had a couple of things to talk about. So this was the video called Daesh or ISIS Are Not Good Muslims. And to date, it's still the most popular video I've made. And there's a few things to say about it. So there was some discussion about Yazidis and their status as people of the book, or dhimmi, I think is the official term. And while Yazidis would not fit the traditional criteria people of the book, that is true. They have been given the title of honorary people of the book in the past, in previous fatwas. This is why when you're trying to understand Islam, you can't just look at it from the perspective of what a lot of people on YouTube did. A lot of people on YouTube who criticize my video are what I could only call fundamentalist atheists, who spent most of their time, most of their critical lens was based on criticizing fundamentalist Christians, fundamentalist Protestants specifically. And fundamentalist Protestants put a lot of weight on the original text and not about theology and reinterpretation. And that's not how Islam works. But they took that same critical lens of like, if we can criticize the Bible enough, then the fundamentalist Protestants' arguments fall apart, because it does. That's why fundamentalism is silly. And let's apply it to Islam, and not just like fundamentalist Islam, but all of Islam, a giant religion. And not realize that Islam has thousands of years of theology, legal codes, because Islam had for a long time an intertwining of the religious code and legal code. And so there's a lot of decisions and things built upon each other, and different types of philosophies, and all sorts of important information that it's actually pretty hard to get a hold of unless you master classical Arabic. I do not know classical Arabic, but I do know that there's a lot more complication in this. And so Yazidis have been, in the past, given the title of honorary people of the book in probably a historical case in Syria of yesteryear, or Iraq of yesteryear. And I have had requests to talk about the Yazidis, but actually a lot of people have made videos about them, so soon, because there's already some really good videos on who the Yazidis are, but they're kind of the descendants of the pre-Islamic religions in Mesopotamia. There was also a request to talk about Jesus in Islam and how Jesus is actually recognized in Islam. He's recognized as a prophet, not the son of God, but he does have an important role to play, and all the stuff about forgiveness, all the lessons about him and his crucifixion, everything like that, are actually part of the whole thing. So I just thought that would be an important thing to mention. And the source of that video is a open letter written to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi by a group of about 100+ imams, outlining all of the reasons why, under Islamic theology, ISIS is violating the rules. And I think that that was an important document, and that's kind of what my video was discussing. I will say that I probably was straying a bit from the channel's topic, but I was also in a situation where I was setting up a collaboration with Will Fox of Political Junkie, and he was doing a video on ISIS, and I wanted to do a video that had something to do with ISIS, and it resulted in this project. And so I still think I'm pretty happy about what it did and what looking at Islam in a way that a lot of people who just study Christianity wouldn't have done. And those are my top 10 videos of 2016. But I do have some comments about the other ones that didn't make the cut. So I did make a video about 5 people who changed the world. I felt really bad about how they were all men, which inadvertently started the Badass Women of History series. So I guess that all worked out in the end. Culture or local food versus. I'm pretty happy with that. The Iowa caucus video was interesting. It's from a more innocent time when we still didn't know who was going to be the Democratic or Republican candidates. It's interesting to see it back in context now. I want to make a shout out. I started the Badass Women of History series. I do want to make a shout out to Omar Eid, who has a channel called Knowledgeable Reaction. And he does a similar series on his channel. And I always feel bad that like my channel's got quite a bit of a larger audience, but he does all these really amazing work. So if you want to see more kind of really awesome profiles of women in history, I would definitely check out Knowledgeable Reaction. He has far too few subscribers for what he deserves. And if you go to his channel and subscribe, tell Omar that I sent you, because I think that'll make him smile. And Omar is a pretty cool guy. He's a really good, friend. He's really, really good commenter and participant in the Step Back community. So I'm really happy to see that he's making this content. I got some requests to do some more discussions on non-Western people. Non-Western peeps. When it comes to Badass Women of History, I thought that the Aisha video did that fairly well. There will probably be more in the near future. So that'll be fun. I'm really excited about it. What's the next? So, and then I did Badass Women in History too. I talked about women in programming. And what's the big one I take away with that? Me at the museum. All right. There's a lot of like comments to respond to that I really, I think that not like the thing to talk about right now, but there's a lot of fun comments. I got requested to talk about people like other Badass Women in History, like Rosalind Franklin, Admiral Grace Hopper, Ada Lovelace, Hedy Lamarr. And so those people are all, I run them all through, but some of them are already well covered by YouTube videos. So I'm pretty happy about, I want to do videos about people who haven't been talked about already. But some of these look like they'll be really good. I've also wanted to talk a little bit about Sappho and Lesbos. There's this discussion about like, oh, Sappho's from Lesbos. Is she a lesbian? And actually, yes, Sappho was in a bunch of homosexual relationships as far as we can tell from her record. But, and that reputation she got, and this is actually where the term lesbian actually comes from. So I thought that was an amusing comment to respond to. I got a bunch of really cool requests on my voodoo video about a bunch of other syncretic religions that I put to discuss, like Candomblé, Ubuntu, Christianity in Sweden, which apparently very syncretic, and Santeria, which I have put on my list, and how Judaism and Christianity, there's somebody who made a comment that said that Judaism and Christianity were, like, I was implying that they were not syncretic faiths, but they actually are. I actually think that all religions are kind of syncretic, and they're kind of this, they build up on each other over time. So that'll be definitely a thing that happens in the future. And there's also Macumba, and yeah, this voodoo video, I really like the concept of the voodoo video, talking about syncretism in religion, religious studies, and yet I'm sad that didn't get more attention. You know, maybe it's me being self-indulgent, but that's one of my. I'm very proud of that video, and it didn't perform all that well. So I have a couple questions from people in the chat room. What's the best way to deal with negative comments? From my good buddy Name Explain. So Name Explain's a fun channel. He talks about the histories and contexts of words in our common lexicon. And he just passed, I think, like 25,000 subscribers because he had a super successful video. And I want to give him an internet high five for that because he deserves it. He's really funny, and his art is this cute and memorable thing. So what's the best way? Ooh, yeah. To answer for that, I would be in a much better position than I am now. But I have a really big blacklist of words that I censor out of my comment section. I also am much more willing to take care of comments from people who are obviously just taking the piss out of something rather than, like, you know, actually contributing to a conversation. I don't mind if people don't like my video or if people don't like my arguments, but doing so in a way where you're not expecting to have a conversation, you're just expecting to complain about my video, I just get rid of those. And realize that the people who are commenting on the internet don't really know you all that well, and not taking it personally. They're not, I mean, they are trying to judge you as a person because people on the internet are really cruel, but I wouldn't take it personally. I would probably, you know, you have to have a bit of a, you have to be a bit of a, you know, thick-skinned person. But in the end, you realize that they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know you. They don't know the story of what you did. Have you considered making a video about Anabaptists, Amish, Mennonites, Hutterites that may include their beliefs, culture, language, and history? That's pretty cool. I did have one request to talk about the Anabaptists. Maybe going in depth onto the Amish people and the Mennonites and the Hutterites would be pretty cool. Actually, that sounds really awesome. That's something that I really would want to write down and talk about. What if China or the United States invades Tunisia? I mean, it'd be like a super short war. Probably take like a day. I mean, Tunisia's a cool country, but like, those two militaries are just like overwhelming force. Like, I don't even know. What purpose would any of those countries have in invading Tunisia? Tunisia is not a country, like, it's really important in Mediterranean trade, but like, it's a regional power. It has no, it just doesn't, I don't see I just don't understand. I don't know. I don't even know where this is going. I don't have an answer. It's so odd. Ooh, so someone asked me a question about what about making a video about the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I have considered that in the past. It is on my list. I do have a upcoming thing, and I'll talk about maybe this at the end of the whole stream. But I do have plans that the Austro-Hungarian Empire is involved in. So no worries. I also want to talk, so the next video on my list is a video I talked about when it came to MRSA. So this was about an incident in which a microbiologist and a historian looked through an ancient, like, medical textbook from like 900 AD and found this remedy for eye infection that turned out to be actually really good for killing. And I just thought that was a cool story, and I made a video about it. It's another one of those videos I'm kind of sad it wasn't more successful. Will you ever touch on maritime history or history of trade? Maritime, I mean, those are, I love, like, I mean, I can only make so many videos, but maritime history is cool stuff. It's kind of like the history of, like, taking a world around an ocean and looking at the world from that perspective. So, like, let's not do European history or American history or African history, but do Atlantic history and see the Atlantic world as a thing. which is really cool. And like, the history of like, how did trade move across, and what was like, the life on the high seas and all that kind of cool things. I've definitely played to the idea of doing a video on what pirates really were and privateering and stuff. So that might be a thing I could do. And I also have a book called The World Trade Created, which is a bunch of like small case studies on the history of trade. And that's the thing that I really wanted to do. So you mentioned Zoroastrianism in Japan. What is up with that? I did not. I talked about Rastafarianism in Japan, which does exist. All right. I did a video on Mansa Musa, which was cool. I had this question about what is the poorest person on Earth, and I haven't been able to think of a satisfactory answer to it. The person was like the most in debt person on Earth, kind of like what was his name? Like Kyle in that episode of South Park where he had the entire world's debt on his own credit card. Would you be interested in a trade agreement with England? Like, you mean like me personally? Like England signed a trade agreement with Tristan Johnson? That'd be fun. I'm not sure what I could provide, but snarky YouTube videos, I guess, in exchange for, I don't know, Jaffa cakes. I like those. I'd do that. The time the world ended, talking about the coolest thing about like the ancient Indus Valley civilization that I'd really like to talk about at some point. The video I made for my wedding, which was really fun. Like, one of the great things that happened in 2016, the best thing that happened to me in 2016 for sure, was getting married and falling in love and all that fun stuff. It made me happy. Oh, okay. It's a Civilization 5 meme. I need to play that game more. I didn't give it as much attention as I should have. Sorry if I missed the whole thing. But yeah, getting married was really great, and I'm glad I was able to make a video to kind of celebrate it. It was just the thing I did for fun, and I'm happy. That's something I can talk about with you guys. Why was Columbus looking for Asia? Talking about globalization, the death of the Ottoman Empire. A lot of cool requests for little events like that would happen with little events that happened that would have changed the world, like Hitler getting accepted into art school, or things like, or a lot of those little tight things. So I've been asked for my requests on the YouTube anti-feminist movements, or anti-feminists on YouTube. These are like, I'm guessing like the YouTube drama queens like Sargon of Akkad and Bering and those kinds of people. I don't know. I think that most of the time they're, and Thunderfoot, I think most of the time that they're really, really, really wrong on most things. And even like a cursory look at the things that they say show that they do like tiny bits of research. They do really uncharitable readings of things and take the most extreme examples of feminists and apply it to the entirety of the concept of gender equality, which is super weird. It's kind of like what they do with Muslims. So I guess it kind of speaks to their lack of nuance. And then they make a lot of money off it. So they just make like the same videos complaining about the same people over and over again, and they make crap tons of money off of it. I think it's silly. It makes me sad, and I'm glad that there's like cool people out there like Kevin Logan who just like kind of put them in their place and put my faith in humanity back. Do you ever contribute to Reddit's Ask Historians? I used to. I used to actually have the little tag beside my name, but I stopped because lazy. Yeah, that's all I can say to that. So, where are we next on my little journey through my videos of 2016? I did a video on alcohol, and I got a request to do a video on different state laws when it came to alcohol in the United States. This is my 4th of July video, and I'm actually kind of depressed that that video that people didn't like that one, but whatever. I did a video on Brexit. That was fun. I made a mistake with Hungary, where I knew Hungary had a far-right leader, but I picked the wrong guy, and I screwed that up. And I got references to No Man's Sky. So I got in my second Q&A video, I got asked what video games I play, and I said that I played a bunch, but there's been an update because like No Man's Sky turned out to be a bust, which was sad. I had so much hope for that game, like many people did. I played Pokemon Go for quite a bit, and then Pokemon Go also kind of got stale and lame, so I stopped playing it because I really didn't see what the point in it was anymore. And yeah, there's some cool stuff. I also made a video on the Spanish Civil War, which, judging how there's still a lot of people asking me about things to do with anarchism, I imagine there's a few fans of that video here tonight. There's some discussion about the CNT killing Catholics, and that it was a one-sided video. I haven't been able to find any like super reliable information that like the Confederación Nacional del Trabajo was like killing the clergy in huge numbers. I'm not being a denialist or anything like that, but I just wasn't able to find this kind of information to satisfy putting it in my video. I did, oh yeah, so I will talk about the one video I do regret making, which is interesting. It was a video on Iceland. And I feel bad for Stefan, who's, if you're still here, Stefan, I apologize for that video about Iceland because so many major facts wrong. Most Icelanders don't believe in elves. Some crazy people do, and really old people do, but not very common anymore. Also, the idea of the first police officer dying in Icelandic history was also wrong. It was actually the police somebody for the first time in Icelandic history, which is even crazier. And that the dating app was actually a joke. It was like the whole dating app to like check if you were like, not too related to your family member. That was wrong. That was apparently a joke or like a hoax app, and I apologize for that. And I know it's unfair because I know Icelanders also suffer from having tons of really big misconceptions about their country. And it's sad because I just kind of contributed to that and I feel bad about it. So I apologize to Stefan Thorvaldsson and all other Icelanders who I slandered. I slandered Icelanders. Man, try to say that one 10 times fast. And I don't really have much to say about my Shakespeare video. Shakespeare's a hoax. There's some Q&As about history. I do have a question about the video about the Three Kingdoms period would be interesting. I imagine this is something to do with Chinese history, which I need to do more of. So I will take a note of this. Do you think Mexico will see more extreme left-wing parties rise in a reaction to Trump? I mean, that'd be really cool. Mexico is kind of interesting. It's already kind of got a little bit of a left-wing streak to it. I'd be interested to see. I mean, that'd be cool if it happened, but I don't really know much about it. This is sad because it got through the blacklist because I have all the swearing, but Zachary White said only 17 views. That sucks. You're one of my very favorite new YouTubers. Hopefully, since nobody is here, you'll actually see this, though. You rock. Aw, Zach. Zachary, you're a very nice person. No one else saw that but me, but I saw it. So I hope you know that. Also, I realized I hadn't made my wife a moderator. That's bad. Hope I don't get in trouble for that one. And then, yeah, Xander from Art Explains made the video on organ transplantation. And I definitely think that you should check out that video. It was really good. Xander's channel, Art Explains, amazing channel. Showed the whole video on organ transplantation, shows that he has a very wicked sense of humor. And I think that it's worth checking out on that. And also, there's a link on there to sign up to become an organ donor. And if you haven't done that yet, please go through that, because that was one of the things we wanted to do. And also, if you go to Xander's channel and subscribe, because I suggest you do, that you'll see that there's a video I made for his channel as well. And it's a video, so there's like a hidden step back video that no one has ever seen. And it's just sitting on Xander's channel with only 700 views. And I think that if you want to see a hidden step back video, there's one right there. I have another question that says, what's the most insane response video to one of your videos that you have seen? So there's only ever been one response video I've seen to Step Back History, which was on Tyler Preston's account. And Tyler Preston is one of those like professional YouTube anti-feminist type people. It was an attack on ISIS, and it was my attack on my ISIS video, and it was using the exact logic that I was talking about. I thought it was silly. My old video, though, I do remember one time having a video from this person who thought that I was like part of the Knights of the Round Table, and it had something to do with like the Illuminati and the New World Order, and how I was like this YouTube plant for like some big global conspiracy because my name was Tristan. It was so weird. Happy New Year and greetings, everyone. Best wishes. And Tristan, congrats for over 14,000 subscribers. Thank you, TKV Education. I appreciate that. All right. I do have a little bit left to go on. I did make my political correctness video. That's another one that I was really happy about. So the political correctness video was a companion video that I was asked to make for an actual in-person debate on political correctness that happened in my town back in October. And I've been asked to do another one for the next debate, which is in April, but the topic hasn't been chosen yet. So that will be a fun thing to also do. But the full debate is still waiting to come out on YouTube, but it will come out on YouTube. And when it does, I'm definitely going to put it on my channel so that you can see it. And also, like, political correctness is also a weird term, because political correctness, as the debate turned out to be like this fairly empty term that I never really, like, basically the two sides of the debate on political correctness were one side arguing in favor of being polite to other people and another side arguing in favor of free speech. I feel like everyone felt like they wanted to agree with both sides, and it was just the side that argued better that won. I tried making, let's see, what's another video we have here. We have a neocon video, which was interesting. I don't really know how to speak much about democratic neocons, but that was something. I also got requests when I made my video for the SPLC. It was my first attempt to make some art style. As you can see, it was kind of me going back on my art style for a little bit. And I think that, like, I'm changing my art style. I'm doing a big revamp in 2017. Sorry, the cat is about to jump on me, and I'm trying to stop her from doing it. And so there's lots of new art. So my SPLC video has a lot of new original art, which I thought was pretty cool. And I got requests to talk about Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and Majid Nawaz, who are two people that they labeled as anti-Islamic radicals that people thought were unfair. And I looked them up, and one of them says has like all these, like, I was a child bride, but like escaped to the Netherlands, and now I'm just a former Muslim who wants to change, wants to reform things, and just like shit talks Islam like crazy. It was super fair, but also it turns out that a lot of her backstory doesn't really check out either. Now, her friend was murdered by a fundamentalist Muslim, Theo Van Gogh, which is super screwed up. But it's taking the piss on a lot of people, and I thought it was really unfair. As far as the second person who's like claims he used to be a terrorist or used to be an extremist and now is not anymore, and that's his whole story. I don't know. A lot of his story also doesn't check out because he says he's still a Muslim. He does a lot of really non-Islamic things. There's some people who are making the claim that he's more doing these reforms, which tend to be fairly toxic comments about Islam in general. And yet is seen to be doing it more for the popularity and the money rather than like an actual act of activism. I honestly think that maybe in that case that the SPLC was being a little overzealous. But I can't speak a lot more to that. And that doesn't diminish all of the work that the Southern Poverty Law Center did anyway. So nuts to that. All right. So I have a few more questions, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. So some pre-Q&A Q&A. Thoughts on France being communist for a brief time? I'm not sure when that was. Would have been interesting to hear about. The U of T professor. Yeah, the U of T professor. So there's a professor at the University of Toronto who didn't like the fact that there was going to be a new hate speech law. So in Canada, we have hate speech laws. And that misgendering people, like people like talking about misgendering people into the gender that they don't feel that they identify with, would be considered a hate crime or a hate speech crime. And he was super against it, and he said it was his free speech. And he said that he doesn't like hate transgender people. He just didn't want to kowtow to political correctness or something like that. And it kind of goes aside because it's saying like, oh, like, it's first of all really, really overreaching what the scope of hate speech laws are. And also, like, it's the emphasis. Like, why is this the sword you want? Like, is this really the hill you want to die on? Is fighting for your right to intentionally misgender people as a way to like be a jerk to transgender people? I don't understand. I don't understand the emphasis on that. If you're taking ideas for future videos, an intro to America's involvement in the Middle East with a focus on the Ottoman Empire would be pretty interesting. I wouldn't mind doing something like that. So yeah, I have a bunch of questions here that I took when I was ramping up to my 1,000 subscriber Q&A, and I want to answer the rest of them that I never got to because I'm not going to do any more Q&A videos. So so I have a couple on me. So do you speak French? Ouais, je parle un peu français, mais j'ai pas la pratique et j'ai pas les amis qui parlent français avec moi. Basically, what I said was, in really terrible French, is that I speak a little bit of French, but I don't. But I live in London now, and not many people here speak French, and so I have no one to practice with, so it's getting kind of rusty. Do you like the game Civilization? Obviously, I've played it. I mean, obviously, I don't get the references quite as well as other people do, but I played it a little bit, and I liked it. It's one of those games I feel like I should go back to at some point. How do you react when people point out the leftist bias in academia? I claim that, I mean, I don't know if it's a bias. It's just kind of a natural reaction to when people get more education. But I say like that. But I mean, going on an anti-liberal going on right now would not be the way to fix it. How did you feel when you realized you're about to hit 1,000? Pretty crazy. Now I'm at 14,000, so I don't even know what I would say anymore. It's crazy. I don't even understand that many people watching my videos. I don't think I can even comprehend a number that big. What are your hobbies? I play a lot of video games, like a lot. That's kind of bad. I read a lot. I run a podcast and a radio show through the university. That's pretty fun. And I'd probably say that's the extent of my hobbies. My main hobby is making step back videos. Can you talk more about Paradox in a future Q&A? Like Paradox the company? I love Paradox games. I like them way more than I like Paradox way more than I like Civilization. I think that Paradox games ended up being the game that I wanted Civilization to be, and so I play those instead. I'd probably say that'd be the answer that I'd give to that. Phrenomythic, otherwise my friend Fedor. You should go check it out. Phreno Mythic. He has some pretty neat videos, and he's also an undersubscribed channel that you'll have a lot of fun watching. Will you broaden your channel's topics, or will you stick to history-related topics? For my own channel, I'm considering just that, although I haven't been able to do anything for half a year due to personal circumstances. Some channels have several legs to stand on to attract a broader audience. So there are some channels, like I would say like Extra Credits, that manage to be a game channel and a design channel and a history channel all at the same time, fairly successfully. And I think if you set up the series explicitly like that, that's cool and it can work. I think, though, that they built their audience before they branched out. And I think that you have to be at a certain level of success before you can play something like that. But for me, I think that history opens up so much discussion room that I'm never going to have time to do more stuff, you know? I have on my Patreon a chance to open up a second series on the future, but for now, I'm thinking of history. I'm thinking of there's just so much to talk about, and almost anything can be related to it. So I don't see an end to it. Who is and was the poorest person in history? I said I can't find a satisfactory answer to that one. What makes a story worth telling? That's a good question. I think that anything that you feel like you're not just, like when I'm thinking of making a video, this is from Will. I think that when I go for a video to talk about, if I can find some way that I can find like the bigger story that this story tells, that's usually when I'm like, all right, this is a good next video to do. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's like on narrative and how to make something compelling. But yeah. What do you think about ancient astronauts? I think it's really silly, and it's mostly inspired by the History Channel losing all credibility at being a good history channel. And I probably will talk about it later, but I do have a plan to make a video about it, but it's silly. It's very silly. What do you see as the difference between historical revisionism and historical apologetics, or is there no difference? I mean, one is trying to change a historical narrative using established techniques. The other is trying to do, make somebody feel like they're a defend something with historical techniques, but which, because it has that preconceived notion that it already needs to defend something, that's when you get into things like denialism, and that's not good. That's bad history. What's your favorite period of history? Oh, geez. Oh, God. I can't name that. That's not a fair question. How much do you think your view of history influenced by national ideas of a nation, one history that is partially founded on the academic teaching of history today? I know that missed historians have left it behind and used other theories like critical postmodernism, historical materialism, eclecticism, but you can still find signs of it in the teaching of history, like Eurocentrism and big focus on national heroes, such as Gustav Vasa in the middle home country, Sweden, or the founding fathers in the United States. I think that's an interesting one. I'd say that, like, this is kind of what I did step back to get out of, is the movement of like how the histories that we said to the public, we sell to the public, either in high schools or in our monuments or our TV shows, are very nationalistic because they're designed not to be strictly for educational purposes, but for trying to create better citizens, more patriotic citizens. And that's kind of what Step Back was meant to combat. Maybe do a video on the history of the new European right movements like the EDL, French National Front, etc. I mean, I could. I already touched a stove earlier this year, or a little while ago, so I think I'm going to give myself some time to, do some stuff that nobody can get mad at me for before I let go and, tick off the far right again. Kong Ming asked me what my opinion on Whig history is. So Whig history is like this term for like conservative, like establishment story historians, like people who defend stuff like the founding fathers having this great idea about liberty and justice for all. We'll not talk about slavery, all that kind of stuff. It's outdated. That's the only way I could talk about it. It's outdated. What was the first civilization in the Middle East? I guess they would probably say something like in Mesopotamia, it'd be like Ur or Uruk, or something in like the super ancient Iraq. Who was the first pharaoh before the Persians conquered Egypt? Ooh, I don't know that one right now. Which Roman civilization do you think had the greatest influence on Western culture? Byzantine, Roman Republic, or Roman Empire? I'd probably say Roman Empire, like the big one, the Caesars and stuff like that, because they, like, a lot of the symbology and a lot of the structures that were set up in that period seem to have a lot of echoes even today in European history, or in the way Europe works. What place on Earth has the most extreme bad weather, like hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, floods, etc.? It's a difficult question. America gets all of the tornadoes, or almost all of the tornadoes on Earth. I didn't know that until recently. That's very cool. There's a cool story about how India, the island of Ceylon, where Sri Lanka is today, used to have a land bridge that got destroyed in a hurricane. I always thought that was pretty cool. Why did Alexander's Greek Empire collapse after his death? Also, if he didn't die so young, what else could he have accomplished? Well, it collapsed after his death because he had no successor, and also he just like gave out huge parcels of land to like his friends, and after he died, none of them were like, all right, let's keep this together. What else could he have accomplished if he didn't die so young? I imagine that once he had to get out of the act of conquering things and into the act of running things, it would not have been as good for him. Ayub Amrani asked, what was the cause of the Great Berber Revolt against the Umayyad Arabs? I don't know. Dominic Healy, can you explain how the languages of imperialists became mainstream in their respective colonies and the impact this had on culture and development? You're asking me to basically summarize the work of Frantz Fanon. which or actually W.B. Du Bois as well. And there's this whole thing called double consciousness, which is when you live in this imperial society where you're part of like a subaltern group, like if you're a black person in the United States or you're an African in French Africa, that you're going to be like very like you're going to learn their language. So you'll learn English, you'll learn French, and then in doing so you kind of internalize the colonizer's image of you, which is not which leads you to not see yourself fully as human, and this causes people to not be able to live to an ideal that they want to. Like, it leads you to not being able to live your life as a successful business person and a successful black person at the same time, and it leads to like a conflict in roles in your own mind, and that hurts you and it hurts people around you. What if the USA collapsed like the USSR? That'd be pretty bad for the world. Pretty bad. Be a huge economic collapse. Be interesting because if things just stayed the way they were, there'd be a whole bunch of states that would actually be pretty powerful countries. Like California would all of a sudden be one of the most powerful countries on earth. And I think Texas would be, and New York would be too. But I don't know. America, it was difficult to imagine the USSR collapsing from the vantage point of the 80s until it happened. So even imagining what the USA would be like collapsing would be difficult. What do you think is the real successor of the Roman Empire among modern countries? I can't decide between France, Germany, and Russia. Should anybody else be considered? Well, I mean, Russia tries to consider itself the logistical or the logical heir of the Byzantine Empire because I think some old czar married, well, czar comes from Caesar, but like some old Russian emperor married into Byzantine royal line, and that's where they get the claim from. And Germany and France fight over real heir to the Roman Empire, but I mean, all of Western Europe really is an heir of the Roman Empire. They conquered the entire continent. I don't know if having a claim on the true Roman Empire really means anything. You know what? The real successor of the Roman Empire is the Vatican, because they're actually in Rome and they make a big deal out of all of the Roman tapestry and stuff like that. So I'll just say that. What do you think about Donald Trump? I think that I have already clearly given my opinion on this since this person sent the message. But yeah, he's a terrifying figure if you know your history. Because, like, at the very least, he's going to be super disruptive and cause a whole bunch of a lot of problems, and a lot of people are going to lose their livelihoods and possibly their lives. Or he is going to be like this robber baron type president that's going to like rob the country blind. I'm hoping that, you know, he's just kind of neutral and he just kind of, you know, just figures out how to be president in a few years and stops doing crazy things. That's all I can hope, really, I think, though. Would you rather live in a place where the rich, like the top 35%, to pay everyone else's bills? I'd rather be in a place where there's no money, like where there is no rich people, because there's no poor people. That sounds good. What do you think of the Quebecois party? It seems like people are either diehard Quebecois or hate their guts. If you're talking about like the Bloc Québécois, which are a federal Quebec nationalist party in federal parliament, I think that in many ways their time has passed. A lot of like the hardcore Quebec separatists are dying out because they're mostly baby boomers, and the baby boomers are not going to have political power forever. And in the long term, I don't think that Quebec's nationalists are going to have a big impact on Canadian politics, at least until something big and nasty happens in the near future. I mean, it could come back, but for the moment, it's rather dormant. And I think that a lot of the legacy of the 1990s and a lot of misunderstanding between French and English has caused a lot of the hatred between the two groups. It makes me sad. And what country do you think is the most developed in North America? I don't know. There's 3 countries in North America. Both of them are fairly developed. I don't even know. I don't even know what the good answer to be would be for that. Alrighty. So we're going to be coming closer to the end. We're going to be coming closer to the end of this stream and this New Year's look back with a little bit of an idea of what the future holds for Step Back. So one of the things, so here's a few things that I plan on doing in the next year, in 2017, is I'm going through a process which I'm calling Step Back 2.0. And Step Back 2.0 is a project in which I am revamping Step Back from first principles, ground up stuff. So I'm slowing down the process of making videos intentionally to make really good videos. And I'm trying to improve every step along the way. So I've already done some major changes to how I animate. If you notice my hate groups video, animation has changed quite a bit, and it's even going to get better in the next one that I'm working on now. And it's also, I'm also planning on revamping. I have the next video is going to have me revamping the way my audio works. I bought a bunch of new audio equipment, so it's going to sound a lot better. I have a new video, or I have plans to revamp the way I do research, the way I write scripts. And I'm hoping that by doing this, I can turn Step Back into something where my plan is by the end of 2017 for my videos to be like CGP grade quality videos. I also plan on making my videos longer, going for like 15 to 20 minutes rather than like my previous stuff. But that's also gonna be, go on along the way. It's all process. As for some other future videos that I plan on doing in the new year, I have a collaboration coming up. I have a few collaborations coming up in the next few months. And I have a lot of really, really cool ideas for what the next few videos could be, but I don't want to spoil them. The plan, though, is I'm going to be making at least one video a month all year. And my very, very tentative date is to have in mid to late January the next video come out. And I'm pretty excited about it. I'm also, this is all depending on how things work on Patreon and everything like that, because the more money invested in the channel, the more I'm able to, invest time-wise and money-wise into growing what I'm doing. My whole plan is to try and make myself sustainable by the end of 2019. So I hope, my goal is to grow as much as I did this year and hopefully have one video break 100,000 views. That's my one big hope for this year. All right, so I'll just take a handful of questions and then I will send you guys off and you guys can enjoy the rest of your New Year's Day. So I don't have much to say about Operation Barbarossa or whatever the Dag Hammarskjöld accident or murder was. What if Mars was Earth-like? Well, that would make, getting off of here rather easy, would it not? I'm not sure what Earth-like Mars was even like. Who knows? Could have been dirt and mud for all we know. So thank you, James. So to sign off, I want to say I really appreciate you guys coming out and watching me today. I hope to, if you missed part of this, I plan on finishing the stream, chopping up the video, and releasing a whole bunch, like releasing chunks so that you can catch the parts that you missed or the parts you want to rewatch. If you want to help with growing this channel and you're not already subscribed, go and subscribe down below. You can leave comments on this video, I think, or you will be able to when the videos come out. But really, the main thing that would really help the channel is sharing this video with people, either on Reddit, with your friends. You know, this stuff really, by sharing it on a platform where people who haven't seen the channel before can go see it, you're helping the video grow even more than the people who would just click through, but because YouTube promotes videos that get promoted. And also, you know, you're going to see, you're helping me move towards a position where I can actually career-wise make doing Step Back and improving history education online my job. And I really want to do that at some point. And anything that you can do, sharing, Patreoning, liking, subscribing, all that stuff will really, really help. And I hope to see you guys later in 2017. You guys have been great.